It was supposed to be a regular afternoon. Miss Tanya, a kind-hearted woman in her 50s, had just finished her grocery shopping. She walked out of the store, bags in hand, when suddenly a police officer called out to her. At first, she thought it was just a routine stop. Maybe a question, maybe a misunderstanding. But the moment she saw the look in his eyes, she knew this was different. The officer accused her of stealing, pointing to a half-eaten sandwich in the trash near the store entrance. Confused and insulted, Miss Tanya tried to explain she had never even touched it, but the cop wasn't listening. Instead, his voice grew sharper, his stance more aggressive. The situation escalated fast. Within moments, he did the unthinkable, demanding that she prove her innocence in the most humiliating way possible. Tears welled up in Miss Tanya's eyes as bystanders watched in shock, some recording but too afraid to step in. Just when things seemed at their worst, a car screeched to a stop nearby. The door flew open, and out stepped a sharply dressed man, his face filled with fury. It was her son, Malik, a well-respected attorney, and he had arrived just in time. The cop had no idea who he was dealing with, but he was about to find out. Malik's heart pounded as he stepped onto the scene, his sharp eyes locking onto the officer standing over his mother. He had seen plenty of cases like this in the courtroom, but never had he imagined his own mother would be at the center of such an outrageous act. His fists clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. Anger wouldn't help her now. Strategy would. Miss Tanya, shaken but proud, stood her ground. She didn't need to say a word. The humiliation on her face said enough. The officer turned to Malik, sizing him up. "Sir, this is a police matter. I suggest you step back," he said with a smirk, clearly not realizing who he was dealing with. Malik pulled out his wallet, flashing his bar card. "I'm not just anybody. I'm her attorney. Now tell me exactly what law you think she broke." His voice was calm, controlled, but his eyes burned with quiet rage. The officer hesitated for a split second, caught off guard. "She stole that sandwich," he muttered, gesturing to the trash. "Store security said." "Did they?" Malik cut him off. "Because I don't see anyone from the store here accusing her. Just you, standing over a woman who's done nothing wrong." He turned to the bystanders. "Anyone here see her take anything?" Silence. People shifted uncomfortably, some shaking their heads. The officer's grip on his belt tightened. He wasn't about to back down that easily, but neither was Malik. The officer's jaw tightened as Malik stepped closer, his presence demanding answers. Miss Tanya still hadn't spoken, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her purse. She had raised Malik to be respectful, to believe in justice, but right now, standing in front of this man with a badge, she wasn't sure justice even existed. The small crowd around them grew, whispers spreading like wildfire. Some had their phones out, recording everything. A woman in a store uniform stepped forward hesitantly. She looked at the officer, then at Malik. I work here," she said softly. "I never saw her take anything." Malik turned to her, nodding. "And did anyone from your store call the police?" The woman shook her head. "Not that I know of." The officer shifted uncomfortably. She was acting suspicious, he muttered, his confidence faltering. "Hanging around near the trash." Malik raised an eyebrow. "So now standing near a trash can is a crime." His voice was razor-sharp, cutting through the officer's weak excuse. "Or is there something else at play here?" The officer's hand hovered near his radio. Maybe he was debating calling for backup, or maybe he was realizing how badly this situation could turn against him. Either way, Malik wasn't letting up. Then, from across the lot, another voice rang out. "What's going on here?" A second officer was approaching, his eyes scanning the tense scene. Malik could only hope this one had more sense than the first. The second officer approached with a firm stride, his eyes scanning the growing crowd, the store employee, and finally Malik, who stood protectively beside his mother. Miss Tanya, though shaken, lifted her chin, refusing to shrink under the weight of the moment. Malik could feel the tension in the air thickening, pressing in on all sides. The first officer, now visibly nervous, turned toward his colleague. This woman was seen near the trash, he started, his voice less certain than before. Couldn't confirm whether she stole anything, but she was acting suspicious. The second officer gave him a sharp look. So you stopped her, accused her, and now half the neighborhood is out here recording. He sighed, clearly realizing how bad this looked. Did you check with the store before jumping to conclusions? Silence. The first officer's fingers twitched near his belt, as if debating his next move. Malik, still calm but seething inside, took the opening. No, he didn't. And now, instead of admitting a mistake, he's trying to justify it. He turned to the second officer. My mother did nothing wrong, but your partner here tried to humiliate her. Now, I need to know exactly what you're going to do about it. The crowd murmured in agreement. The store employee shifted uncomfortably, then stepped closer. She's a regular customer, she added. She's never stolen anything. This was all a mistake. The first officer's face hardened. His pride was on the line now. And Malik knew men like him never admitted when they were wrong. But how far would he take it? The first officer's face remained tense, his jaw locked. He glanced at the second officer, then at the watching crowd. It was clear he was feeling the pressure, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. I was just doing my job, he muttered, making sure the area stays safe. His voice carried an edge, but he was trying to convince himself more than anyone else. Malik exhaled slowly, keeping his temper in check. Safe from what? A woman buying groceries. A mother minding her business. He took a step forward, lowering his voice just enough to make the officer lean in. Or is this really about something else? The tension between them crackled in the air, but before the officer could respond, the store's manager suddenly pushed through the crowd, his face red with frustration. All right, what's going on out here? He demanded. His eyes darted from the officers to Miss Tanya, then to Malik. I just checked the cameras. She didn't steal anything. A ripple went through the crowd. The manager crossed his arms. In fact, she paid in full, just like always. He turned to the first officer. So I'd love to hear why you're still standing here harassing my customer. The first officer shifted uncomfortably, but before he could speak, his radio crackled to life. A voice came through, sharp and urgent. We've got a situation. Backup needed immediately. The second officer's expression darkened. He grabbed his radio. What's the location? The response sent a chill through the air. Right here, your unit. Malik's stomach dropped. This wasn't just about his mother anymore. Something much bigger was happening. The moment the call came through, the energy in the air shifted. The second officer's face tightened as he stepped back, scanning the scene with new urgency. The first officer, already on edge, reached for his radio, but his hands were shaking now. The crowd murmured, confused, some backing away, sensing something was about to go down. Malik's instincts kicked in. He had spent years in courtrooms picking up on subtle shifts in behavior, and right now, the first officer wasn't just nervous, he was scared. Not of Malik, not even of the store manager, but of something else entirely. The second officer's radio crackled again. Unit 47, we have a report. Possible misconduct. Situation escalating. Command wants eyes on this immediately. Malik's breath caught. Someone had reported this officer. Someone with enough authority to call it in. He glanced at the crowd. Had one of them sent in a complaint? Or was it someone higher up watching from a distance? The first officer's face went pale. He suddenly took a step back, looking around like a trapped animal. This is ridiculous, he stammered. I was just. The store manager cut him off. You were just trying to intimidate a customer, and now it looks like someone finally held you accountable. The second officer hesitated, then sighed. I need you to hand over your badge and gun. His tone was firm, leaving no room for argument. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, with shaky hands, the first officer unhooked his badge, his fingers lingering over it before finally placing it in the second officer's palm. His gun followed, and as he took a step back, it was clear he had lost everything in a matter of minutes. Miss Tanya let out a slow breath, her son's hand still on her shoulder. Malik watched as the disgraced officer was led toward the patrol car, the weight of his own actions finally crashing down on him. But just as the crowd started to disperse, Malik's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen. A restricted number. He answered cautiously. "Hello."